Rare, perishable, and next to impossible to cultivate, truffles have captured the imagination and attention of chefs and connoisseurs for centuries. And at just 15 years of age, they ignited the passion of Ian Purkayastha. He tells the story of how truffles changed his life in his new book, Truffle Boy, My Unexpected Journey Through the Exotic Food Underground. Ian, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you again for having me.
I really enjoyed your book. I got the sense of how food connects family and also learning about truffles, which I had like next to no knowledge. But I want to talk to you about truffles later, but I want to talk about your childhood. Growing up, you didn't really have a great childhood, but your uncle helped to introduce you into the world that you are in now. How?
Yeah, so when I was 15, my family relocated from Houston, the busy city of Houston, to rural Arkansas during the recession. And I started foraging for mushrooms with my uncle in Arkansas, who was living there, and he was kind of my link to the outdoors. And I just became obsessed with all things mushroom related. I'd always loved eating and cooking well. And so mushrooms were this really unique new ingredient that were just interesting.
Before.
Yeah, I mean, they were very captivating.
I want to read a passage from your book that describes the first time you tasted truffles. So you order a black truffle ravioli at a restaurant, and you write, "I still have an almost physical memory of that meal. It changed everything. It ignited a pilot light in me. I craved the flavor of truffles like an addict needs another fix. While other kids fixated on getting laid or making the football team, for me, it was truffles all the way." What was it about that meal that just ignited your passion?
I mean, truffles were just this new, unusual flavor that I had never experienced before. And it was just something about it that was just so captivating that it just totally took over. And I wanted to replicate this dish when I returned to Arkansas.
Can you describe what it tasted like?
Yeah, I mean, truffles are so subjective from person to person, but for me, it was just this deep earthiness that was unlike anything I had ever tasted. Obviously resembling wild mushrooms, but gassy and cheesy, but earthy and almost hazelnut-like. It was just very unique and totally transformative.
And then you tell your parents your big idea is to ditch college and you want to move to New York with $5,000 in your pocket and roll around a cooler from restaurant to restaurant trying to sell truffles. How did your parents react to that?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely shock at first. I mean, my father is an Indian immigrant and my mother American, so obviously the college path was what they had always envisioned for me, either becoming a successful businessman or like a lawyer or a doctor. So it was definitely a shock, but I eventually convinced them to let me move to New York. And I had started selling truffles in Arkansas to different local restaurants. And I had a little company in Arkansas. And so I had a plan of action when I came to New York. It wasn't like I was just moving to New York totally on a whim. But yeah, it was definitely.
And how old were you?
I was 16.
Your name comes up quite a lot. Well, your age, sorry. We'll talk about that some more. But I want to get into the nitty-gritties of what truffles are. What is a truffle exactly?
So a truffle is an underground fungus that grows in symbiotic relationship to its host tree. So it's giving the tree nutrients, but at the same time, it's sucking off water from the tree roots to be able to grow into fruit.
A lot of people describe it as a mushroom. Is it a mushroom or is it something?
It's related to mushrooms, but it's actually a fungus.
Okay.
And it has this overwhelming aroma that lures animals to dig it up. And so primarily dogs are now used to find truffles.
Before it was pigs, right?
Before it was pigs.
Why did they stop the pigs?
So pigs, female pigs were used because truffles give off this pheromone that resembles male pigs. And so they were hoping to get laid looking for these truffles. But the truffle hunters were losing their fingers trying to pry them from the pigs' mouths. So dogs are a lot more controllable when trained. But they grow underground and they're almost exclusively wild. So they're really one of the last eternally natural ingredients left on Earth, which makes them so expensive.
And how far back have they been considered to be like a treasure type of food?
Thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But due to their perishability, they only last for about 7 days once unearthed, and their general rarity. That's really the contributing factors that make up their value. And white truffles can sell for about $8,000 a kilo retail.
Why so much more?
The white have never been cultivated successfully. The black have been cultivated on a very minute scale.
So there's two types, black and white?
There's more than 10 different types, but the main varieties that we sell are the black winter and the white winter. The black winter sells for about $2,000 per kilo, and the white for up to $8,000.
And where do they mainly grow from?
So everyone associates truffles with coming from Italy and France. But part of the hope with Truffle Boy was to demystify the actual origins of a lot of these ingredients. So a lot of white truffles actually come from Eastern Europe now, from Romania and Serbia and Croatia, and then they're brought to Italy and resold as Italian product.
Why go through all that effort?
Because there's this misconception that Italian truffles are the very best quality, and so they can demand a higher price in Italy if associated with the Italian provenance. And the same goes with black truffles from France. In reality, a lot of them are coming from Spain now and are then resold as winter black truffles from France.
Most people consider Italy to be the mecca for truffles, but you explained that label might not be deserved. You say you've been fighting a battle against an Italian PR machine skilled at manipulating public opinion with tales of romance. What do you mean by that?
So there's an oral tradition of truffles and mushrooms naturally in Italy and France that doesn't exist in the US. And so Italy has been able to successfully give off this appearance as if only white truffles come from Italy, or the best white truffles rather come from Italy. But in reality, 90% of the truffles that are sold in Italy are coming from these poorer Eastern European countries. And so part of the hope with Truffle Boy is to debunk the misconception of where the truffles are actually coming from, and also try to demystify a lot of these ingredients for a younger generation of chefs that are eager to learn and willing to be educated on these different ingredients.
I'm guessing because to have this idea that truffles all come from Italy, that country benefits greatly. But by you writing that actually that's not what's happening, I'm guessing that some people might not be happy about what you've written. Have you had any pushback against?
I'm definitely not loved by the competition. There really hasn't been anyone that's willing to give an accurate depiction of where the truffles are coming from and who's actually finding the truffles and what's actually going on. So I'm definitely not loved by fellow Italian competitors.
Well, when you were in Eastern Europe, you saw truffles of equal quality, and you traveled there. What's the truffle industry look like there, like in Serbia and Hungary?
It's a little bleak at times. All the truffle hunters hunt with machine guns, and
who are they protecting themselves from? It's just because
well, the average income in Serbia, for instance, is about $300 American. So when you talk about the possibility of finding something that's worth $8,000 a kilogram, everyone gets very protective of their areas. And we went to Serbia to go truffle hunting, and the main truffle kingpin, as mentioned in the book, likes to be armed at all times.
So people would die over truffles?
They have, yeah. And it happens quite often in Eastern Europe when they're in season.
I fail to understand. I'm just thinking that, okay, if truffles are rare and they command a big price, if we find out that there's other places that that's truffles, and if people really like the taste of them, wouldn't it benefit everybody if more truffles, like if there was more truffles?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it has benefited the global supply of truffles. I mean, there are more truffles available now than there were 5 years ago, but at the same time, due to global warming, that global quantity has been decreasing historically. So every year there's historically less and less truffles, which is why I think Eastern Europe was such a prized find when they discovered truffles in Eastern Europe. But truffles are like wine. They have a certain terroir association. So every region produces a different
Like grade or?
Yeah, a different subtlety of truffle. So a truffle from northern Italy smells different than a truffle from southern Italy, even if they're within the same species. So my job is to travel around and to try to find these desirable regions that produce what I think have the best quality traits. And what I found is Serbia has almost identical white truffles to northern Italy, to Piedmontese white truffles.
And you say that North American chefs are prejudiced towards Eastern European truffles. Have you changed their minds yet?
It's definitely a battle, but every year it gets a little bit easier. But for decades, I mean, the finest chefs were only buying white truffles from Alba, which is a town in Western Italy. But Alba actually doesn't produce any white truffles. Alba is actually one of the largest producers of, consumers rather, of these Eastern European white truffles. So just changing that.
I wanted to show some pictures of truffles,
Sure.
and we're looking at one that you're holding. It's, I guess, the size of your palm. You got big hands.
So that's about a $5,000 truffle.
Wow! And you sold this for $6,000, right?
Yeah, five or 6,000. Yeah.
What was the most expensive truffle ever sold in the world?
In the world, I mean, around I think $500,000. But those truffles are usually
Sorry, what?
Yeah, $500,000. But those truffles are actually usually auctioned off for charity. And I think the largest truffle ever found was about, I think, a kilo and a half. So big truffles that are found and sold at charity always command a much higher price than the truffles I sell at wholesale to restaurants.
And you write in your book about truffle bliss. You write, how to describe the truffle's taste, or rather smell, is a challenge. I don't think truffles smell like sex, which is what a lot of people say. To me, white truffles are garlicky, cheesy, earthy, and musky. The flavor molecules bind with fat, and as you eat, the fat coats your mouth and throat. The taste smell doesn't register on your tongue as much as it infuses your sinuses, seeming to take over your body. The truffle cloud sensation stays with you after you've finished eating, and truffle burps last for hours. Is there anything else in the world that tastes like truffles?
Definitely not. And that's also why they're so expensive and why they're so coveted.
And I'm wondering too, because you traveled around the world trying to find other places you can find truffles. What motivated you to do that? Because you put yourself in certain situations in the book where you're like, am I safe? What if something happens to my life? What's the motivation behind that?
I mean, the motivation is to continue finding new regions that have quality truffles. Because I foresee that, as global warming continues to speed up, that the global quantities of truffles will continue to decline. And I'm just on the hunt for maintaining a business, because without truffles, there's no business. So the motivation is to keep the doors open and to continue purveying truffles as a whole.
And you're very honest, because when you come back, when you went to see your chefs, you actually mixed truffles from Serbia with truffles from Italy, and you let them taste them. But then in the end, you said, actually, these are not just from Italy, these are also from Serbia. Why tell them that? Why?
Well, I knew if I was to just walk into the restaurant and say, oh, I've got white truffles from Serbia, they wouldn't have interest in looking at them. So what I did is I do what everyone does, and I mix them together. And after they picked out their truffles, I said, actually, the truffles you've just picked out are Serbian. So now that you've picked them out, there's probably a greater likelihood that you'll buy Serbian white truffles. And sure enough, that was all I needed to hear.
And you said that everybody does that, but people actually do it with the truffles from China, right?
Well, everyone mixes them together, but no one actually tells the final customer where they're actually coming from. So they'll mix them together and say, oh, these are all Italian truffles, but in actuality, they may be coming from 3 different countries.
You describe it like lacing cocaine with
Yes, baby powder or something.
Powder,
yes. Yeah. There's also the Chinese truffle, which is a black variety, and it's a native variety to China, and it looks identical to the black winter truffle from France and from Spain. And so companies will mix that in and essentially make a ton of profit, because this Chinese truffle has no flavor or aroma naturally, and so the price is very, very inexpensive. So they can mix this almost worthless truffle with the real thing and make tons of money.
And does this, I guess, your quest for being honest go back to what your mom used to say to you, that your name is the most important thing, your reputation is very important?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not a whole lot of loyalty in this industry, and so I think the big key to it all has been the authenticity that I'm trying to convey, and also, going back to my childhood, my parents ingrained in me that keeping your good name is all you really have in business, and so that's been, I think, the main motivating factor in this whole process is maintaining my name and my reputation and trying to be as honest as possible.
And you're also educating us. You explained that the exotic food trade often counts on their consumers' ignorance, us being ignorant to what we're eating. We want to teach our viewers about some of these nefarious practices. Firstly, are there any truffles in truffle oil?
There's not actually. Most truffle oil is made with a synthetic flavoring agent that's added to low quality oil to create truffle oil. The synthetic stuff doesn't taste very good at all, and so it's gotten a bad rap in the past few years. And so we've been able to develop an organic, an all-natural, non-GMO truffle oil that we sell. It's much lighter in flavor to the synthetically flavored product, but
because you also have a food company.
Yes, but it actually tastes like truffles. So my company, Regalis, distributes to about 90% of the Michelin-starred restaurants in New York, and we sell to about 300 restaurants across the US. So the product line is just one facet of what I do.
And another thing that I want to ask you about what we're eating, and we don't know what we're eating. The wasabi we eat in North America, what's it made of? Wasabi?
So wasabi, yeah. The wasabi at sushi restaurants is typically made with horseradish that's been dyed green. Real wasabi.
Dyed green.
Dyed green, yeah. Real wasabi sells for about $150 a pound. So it's like, I don't know, $330 a kilo. And it oxidizes after about 30 minutes. So wasabi is also something that's heavily adulterated. There's a whole list of different foods in the book that I talk about being adulterated, such from olive oils to ground black peppercorn is
Caviar.
cut with dehydrated olive pits. Caviar is also heavily adulterated. Literally every single facet of the food world is somehow bastardized in some way. And the specialty food trade is no different.
Do you think that our governments need to do more?
Definitely. I mean, within the US with product labeling, there's also a lot of pitfalls in the entire system because someone can literally make a product at home, buy a UPC barcode online for $40, get a graphic designer to mock up a label, and then they have a product that is ready to sell to market.
You're kidding.
No, and unless you're a $1 billion agri company that's having a daily audit or a weekly audit, there's lots of companies making products that are not totally safe to eat. And I don't want to totally speak out against it because there's plenty of good quality artisanal food producers that are out there, but there's lots of issues with American labeling standards and laws that need to be addressed.
Briefly, what does the average day of New York's leading truffle importer now consist of?
Well, it used to be filling up my van full of mushrooms and truffles and wild edibles and driving from restaurant to restaurant begging chefs to come out to the van to take a look at what I had. And then after a few years, chefs started coming to me wanting to do business. And I was doing all the deliveries and all the pickups at the airports and all the sales. And so now I mainly do all the sales and all the product sourcing. And selling the product is now the easiest part. It's the logistics that are quite difficult. So 80% of my job is fixing something that's gone wrong in the supply chain. It's very hard to get an extremely perishable truffle from a village in Serbia to a fine dining restaurant in New York in less than 48 hours. So there's always something going wrong and there's always something I have to fix. And now we have about 10 employees that help with deliveries and logistics and everything. But I still spearhead sales, so I'm still doing all the sales.
Is there still a lot of secrecy? Because I saw this thing you did with Vice, and you didn't have your logo on your van. Do you still do that?
So one of our vans is still unmarked. That van that was in
why
that
is
video.
that?
That van has just had a slew of problems. We're always getting hit by taxis, and there's always issues, and so that
Parking
one
tickets.
exactly parking tickets. But since then, we've purchased 3 much larger vans, and I decided to get them branded after all. So there's no need to fear the competition anymore.
How competitive of a market is it?
It's cutthroat, and it's very competitive. I mean, there's only around 3 main truffle competitors in the U.S., and we're one of them.
And I mentioned this before, but your age comes up a lot. How do you deal with that?
I mean, it used to affect me a lot more when I was younger, when I was first starting out 9 years ago. But I think once I started talking about the product, and once chefs started realizing that I actually understood what I was talking about the different products, I started gaining loyalty and trust with some of these accounts. And so that's really been key to my success.
David Chang wrote the foreword in your book, and I'm guessing he's like a mentor to you.
He is, yes.
He calls you the luxury foods Google. What does it mean to have somebody like him say that about you?
I mean, it's totally humbling to just have any sort of association with David Chang and a lot of these key restaurateurs and chefs. I mean, chefs for me are, like the rock stars of my world. So it's like having, I don't know, the Beatles or something just justify the work that you're doing. So it's just really, it's a humbling experience.
It must be more too, because you hit the ground, you made this happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been financed through my hard work. I mean, my parents unfortunately weren't able to support me financially when I was younger. So this has just been something I've worked hard at and have been super fortunate to have found success in.
And your family has played a big role in your success. Your mom used to drive you to the airport to pick up stuff. Your dad traveled with you when you went to Eastern Europe. How much have they played a role in your success now?
I mean, tremendously. I mean, they have always given us the freedom to pursue our hobbies and interests. And again, I think, I was never a very academically inclined student. I was never like a gifted student in any regard. And so just to have had parents that have allowed me to kind of pursue alternative interests.
But gifted in a different way, because I think
other than the college path has really been unique and has really empowered me to become successful.
Because I think you're an example of we have this idea of you have to go to college to be successful.
Sure.
But you are truly gifted in what you've done and been able to do. So you are gifted.
Well, thank you.
Because you just said you weren't gifted. I just wanted to point that out to you. You call yourself a magician for impossible to find specialty foods. What's the strangest request you've ever gotten from a chef?
The strangest request, there was this desert parsley root, this tuber that a chef requested, and it took months to source, but I found it through this Native American tribe in Washington State, near Vancouver, and this underground root is only found by women who haven't been menstruating, and it's only found in this under this one tree, and it smells like gasoline when you unearth it, and you have to let it rest for 2 days for the flavor to mellow. That was probably one of the weirder requests. I've also sold salmon sperm sacs. I've sold sea urchin gonads. I mean, there's always strange requests.
You work in the luxury food business. Only the 1% can probably taste the products you sell. Do you ever feel guilty going after such rare and extravagant foods when over 100 million people are currently facing severe hunger worldwide?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, a weird dichotomy to what I do. I mean, it's true, sell very hard to find ingredients. I'm trying to shy away from selling, the uber luxury and more of the hard to find. So a lot of ingredients that we sell now are very approachable, and I'm working with a fruit geneticist in Florida to procure hard to find exotic fruits. So we sell, where we have access to 400 varieties of mangoes. We have access to 30 varieties of bananas. So I think the misconception is selling ultra luxury, because that is changing. And obviously we're big supporters of No Kid Hungry and other affiliated organizations in New York that help with poverty and with child hunger. And so obviously there's a lot more work to do, but it's ever changing.
Do you still like being called Truffle Boy?
Yeah, I mean, I hope Truffle Boy doesn't, or the name at least doesn't follow me till death. But yeah, I mean, Truffle Boy was one of the first names that chefs would call me when I started selling truffles when I was 15 in Arkansas. So the name kind of stuck.
And at the end of the book, you say you're no longer Truffle Boy.
No, I'm aging. I'm gaining weight.
You're
I'm
aging.
aged. I've got a dad bod. It's like it's.
You're doing all right.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Ian, congratulations on all of your success, and
Thank
thank
you so
you
much.
for opening up my mind to cooking and enjoying cooking.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.